Okay, well, we'll get started. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for viewing and joining us for the December 16th regular meeting of the Arcata City Council. The City Council meeting is being held as a teleconference in response to local efforts to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We want to encourage everyone to keep up the efforts to slow the spread of COVID-19 in Arcata. We know that by wearing masks and practicing social distancing, we can again flatten the curve and keep our businesses open. Please support safe shopping by masking up in Arcata. If you wish to make public comment during the meeting, either at the 2 open public comment periods or for an individual agenda item, there are 2 ways to do so. So one, if you are logged into the Zoom meeting webinar, click on Raise Your Hand on the right-hand side of your screen. When it is time for a public comment on the item you wish to speak on, the clerk will unmute you. You will have 2 minutes to comment. Secondly, you can access the meeting by phone. Call the number at the bottom of the screen. Enter the meeting ID also at the bottom of the screen, and then press *9 on your phone. This will raise your hand. When it is time for public comment on the item on which you wish to speak, the clerk will unmute your phone. You will hear a prompt that will indicate your phone is unmuted, and you will have 2 minutes to comment. And with that, if you'd like to join in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now on to roll call. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Pereira.
Here.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
All present.
Great, thank you. Next, we will move on to early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters that are not on tonight's agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this time are limited to 2 minutes, and we can take up to 7 speakers. So please raise your hand if you are on Zoom, or press *9 if you are calling in by phone and wish to make a comment. Do we have any public comment at this time?
There is no public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will move on to our consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. So now I will go through and read the consent calendar. Item A, approve the City Council minutes of December 2nd, 2020. B, bi-weekly report on general warrants. C, declare a continuation of the local emergency related to the coronavirus pandemic. D, approve purchase of an upgraded fluoride feed system from Integrity Municipal Systems, LLC for $38,000 to replace the existing system at the Alliance Lift Station and authorize the city manager to execute the purchase order. E, award a contract in the amount of $92,300 to Walland Construction Incorporated for the Oxidation Pond Improvements Project. Authorize the city engineer to increase the contract amount by up to $9,230, 10% for a total of $101,530 to allow for any unforeseen contingencies and additional work as necessary, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. F, approve amendment extending the existing grazing lease with John E. and Charlene H. Ford, doing business as John Ford Ranch, for a portion of the Jacoby Creek Gannon Slough Wildlife Area. Assessors parcel numbers 501-061-001 002 and 003 and 005 for an additional 5 years and authorize the city manager to sign all applicable documents. G, approve an amendment to existing grazing lease with A.N. Hunt Incorporated, extending the term to expire 12/31/2026 for a portion of the Jacoby Creek Gannon Slough Wildlife Area, assessors parcels numbers 501, 042, 014, and 005, 007, 008, and 016, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. H, adopt resolution number 201-28, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending the class and pay resolution, compensation and benefits for hourly rated part-time, temporary, and seasonal personnel to reflect January 1st, 2021 change in state minimum wage. I, adopt ordinance number 1539, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending section 2703 of Title II Administration, Chapter 6, Emergency Organization and Functions related to frequency of City Council local emergency proclamation review, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only. J, adopt resolution number 201-29, accepting an easement deed for public road purposes over assessors parcel number 507-091-018 and authorize the city manager to execute the certificate of acceptance. And lastly, K, approve the amendment to the agreement between the City of Arcata and Humboldt Trails Council to expand the volunteer coordinator position duties and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. So with that, are there any council members that would like to remove an item? Okay, seeing none, is there a member of the public or staff that requests an item be removed from the consent calendar?
There is no public comment.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I will call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. Thank you. So next we will move on to old business. This is item A, financial forecast of adopted budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. May I have a staff report from City Manager Deemer?
I made it big before I shared the screen. I got lost in the presentation. So let's get us back to starting point. There we go. And I can see all of us too. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is, I guess, would be the 6th update or 5th update on your budget since we passed it July 1st of 2020. And this will be according to data that we've received through November 30th and have been able to put together here for the December 2020 update. So we've started these by just kind of outlining some of the significant concerns. The things that we have bolded in red are some areas that have changed since the last update. Humboldt, on the concern side, Humboldt County was moved into purple tier, as we all know, by the state, further restricting our retail and our restaurants. Although restaurants can still remain open on a very moderate 25% level, we are finding that most of them are just takeout only or have closed, at least temporarily, under this new state order. Hotels are still fairly full, but we are still seeing some extended stays that could reduce our hotel tax for those stays that go beyond 30 days. Wastewater continues to trend about 1% below our estimates of the budget this year. The rate changes do go into effect on January 1st, which might start to rectify that in the second portion of the fiscal year. And a portion of this is attributed to the continued state limitation on the city's ability to charge any penalties for later non-payment. And we had not taken into consideration in our budget that being really extended through what will likely be this whole fiscal year. So at mid-year, you will see that we'll be revising some revenues in categories that reflect reductions that we're seeing in parking meters and parking enforcement, in building and sports field rentals, recreation programs, and our fingerprinting service fees are the big areas around the general fund where we're seeing, pretty significant reductions still in revenue. Some of those will have some offsetting expenses. We won't have, recreation staff that are operating programs for those programs that we won't have revenue for. But overall, we will still see some reductions in our general fund. In terms of our reassurances, we are still seeing sales tax and our transaction use tax coming in at or above projections, and our hotel taxes still being remitted at projected rates or higher. So I'll take you through sort of the same, and this will be new for our 3 new council members, but you will get used to this over the next few months, kind of seeing these same tables month after month. So what we have this month is really the full closeout of what is sort of the first quarter of our fiscal year, but from a financial standpoint is called Q3, quarter 3. This is the months of July, August, and September. And we have complete remittance now here in December for that 3-month period. And you see in fiscal year 1920, our actual was at $715,000. The city's forecast, what we budgeted, our expected number was $436,000. HDL, who is our sales tax consultant, suggested that we budget $546,000. And our actual did come in at actually $758,000. Now the difference really between last fiscal year and this fiscal year actual is that we have had several deferred payments from the early stages of COVID that have come in over this Q3 that are added into the $758,000. But even if we remove those deferred payments, we do find that we are coming in pretty close to where we were for actuals for 2019 and 20. So that is one piece of good news. We're seeing a very similar trend on what we call sometimes Measure G. This is the 0.75% sales tax that is at the point of sale here in Arcata that was approved by the voters several times over the course of the last 20 years. So for quarter 3 of 1920, again, we had seen $614,000. City forecasted $365,000. We did actually receive $689,000. Also had quite a few deferred payments in that $689,000 figure. But again, coming in higher than projected levels. Our hotel tax, or transient occupancy tax, is coming just slightly under where we were last year. So last year at this time, we brought in $375,000. We did forecast, again, very conservatively at $282,000, and our actual right now has come in at $372,000. We do have fairly good remittance, so I want to highlight that we do also have, for the month of October, most of that has been remitted to us as well, and we are seeing a slight decline over the fiscal year 1920, about $25,000 less. But again, still trending on par with what we budgeted for, or higher. Just to cover some of those tax deferrals. So initially, the period of time that Governor Newsom allowed for tax deferrals, we had about $194,000 that we estimated could have been deferred by businesses that were still operating but did not choose to pay their taxes during the periods that they were allowed to defer. And through, at this point, we've received on the sales tax side, $44,000 of those deferred payments, and on the TUT side, about $57,000 of those payments. So we still have about $91,000 out in potential deferred balance that could continue to trickle in over the fiscal year. Some of those businesses have yet to reopen, and some of those may not reopen, and some of this we will not see. We did not budget expecting to receive any of it, but we do still hope for some of it to come in. It is good to note at this point that just this month, Governor Newsom also approved additional deferral options for businesses. This is for quarter 4 of 2020 that we're in right now, and for quarter 1 of 2021. It'll be several months before we can assess how many businesses will take advantage of those programs, but it'll be important for us to keep that in mind as we enter budgeting for next fiscal year. Our water and sewer revenue, so moving away from the general fund side of things into our two largest enterprise funds around water and sewer. We had been seeing a pretty significant trend downward for most of the fiscal year. You will see November for both water as well as for wastewater. We did see an increase in usage and then a corresponding increase in revenues. We're still trending from what we budgeted, slightly down just in wastewater and right on projection for water. But this trend toward up is certainly a good sign as we head into 2021. So our current outlook, we reviewed a little bit. We had full Q2 from statewide perspective last month. Our mid-year budget review is scheduled for March. So we will move through December, be able to close out the month of December by the end of January, be able to put mid-year budget together in February for presentation, either the second meeting in February or the first meeting in March for the council. But the initial indications show that we're tracking lower revenues than last year, but they are at or above projections for our 2021. There is, as I think most people know, the next wave of a federal stimulus package that is being debated right now in Congress. And our understanding as of today is that about $700 billion of that package has very good bipartisan support. Those are agreement areas around unemployment, about small business assistance, about some rental relief, and some pieces of infrastructure that are in that package on agreement. There is still close to $200 billion in pieces that there is some real disagreement around, and $160 billion of that would be aid for state and local government. So it is an area that the National League of Cities and partnering agencies are fighting hard on behalf of local governments for, but that is still a piece that we expect will change when that final stimulus package is passed. It is our hope. I mean, they do have a deadline of Friday midnight to pass a spending package to keep the federal government operational. So we are hoping that by Friday night, we should also know what that stimulus package looks like, and we'll be able to update the council on that at that time. So I'm going to hold there if there are any questions. I know that this is all really new information, especially for our new council members. I do promise you will get used to seeing them over time, and you'll have lots of chances to ask questions before we actually get into a mid-year budget review where you'll be making some recommendations from us.
Great, thank you. Let's see if there's any questions from the council, and we'll start with Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions.
Councilmember Schaefer.
No questions at this time, thanks.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
I don't have any questions, but I did want to thank the previous council for being so fiscally responsible and conservative. And I think that that's really helpful for where we are right now. So thank you.
And Vice Mayor Watson.
Yeah, I know we're looking at some areas that are doing a little bit better than we projected. Would staff say that for the most part, we're pretty much on track with the budget we had laid out and where we're thinking things are going?
My estimation is that the final large picture numbers are going to be right on budget. I do think we're going to, we were very conservative in our tax estimates, in part because we were concerned about other general fund revenues and how they would come in. So I do think seeing, the trend upward in the tax revenues will offset the losses that we have in some of our other recreation programs and use fees. And we, at this point, with the exception of kind of really tracking wastewater, and to be down 1 or 2% over 1 year is also something that fund can buffer. But I'll let our finance director, Starhevsky, just chime in if there's any other funds that you think might end in a different balanced position from where we anticipated this year.
I don't think so. I think those are the key highlights. Is one is general fund and our water and wastewater for enterprise that we've highlighted in previous financial forecasts.
Thank you.
And yeah, I don't have any questions as well, and definitely just want to echo the sentiment of just grateful for what our staff have done to keep a close eye on this. Really appreciate the work you're all doing on this. and giving the public an opportunity to see the progress throughout the year. So do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this item?
There is no public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, so we aren't taking any action tonight on this item, but is there any further comments before we move on to our next agenda item? Feel free to just raise your hand if you have something to add. Okay, so we will move on to old business item B, adopt the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program and approve the Arcata wastewater treatment facility upgrade project. May I have a staff report from Environmental Services Director Andre, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council, and welcome to the new council members I haven't interacted with much yet. Goldstein, Schaefer, and Atkins Salazar. It's a pleasure to be at this point in the process of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. Tonight, we're requesting or recommending the City Council adopt the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program and approve the Arcata wastewater treatment facility upgrade project. The project has been through numerous review and presentations to the council, and I'll go into a little bit about the background of the project, but tonight the step that we're recommending taking, the initial study and draft mitigated negative declaration is the CEQA document that outlines the project and potential environmental effects and outlines mitigation measures to make sure that if there are any potential environmental impacts, that they are mitigated to a less than significant point. And we have done that. We put this document out for circulation on October 26th, 2020 for a 30-day review period, which is standard for documents like this. On November 30th was to be the close date, but one of the trustee agencies, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, requested a little more time, so we extended the comment period to December 6th. And to date, the only comment letter that we have received was from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and it's attached in the packet. I apologize for the volume of the document that's attached in your packet, and we'll kind of walk you through a little bit of it in a moment. But so anyway, we addressed the comments from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, I think, adequately, and what you have before you is the final environmental document that reflects the accommodation of the input from that agency. So this project, I should also say that tonight we have special project engineer Dobie Class is on call if necessary for questions, and environmental programs manager Emily Benby as well. This was a team effort. We had some consultants assist us with this document. I just wanted to thank especially Dilo Freitas, planner from community development, and Emily Benby for really dedicating the time necessary to do a great job with this. So why is this an important step in the process? We have a time schedule order with the Regional Water Quality Control Board to implement our improvements, and we also have a schedule for making sure that we can construct the project within a reasonable period of time. And the environmental document is a requirement for securing state revolving low interest loans for the financing. Some of you probably recall for this year's budget, we had a wastewater 5-year rate structure that was adopted by the council, and that was influenced heavily by being able to debt service low interest loans for this large capital project, the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So there's a lot of background that led up to that point. So anyway, once this is completed and hopefully adopted, we still have the permits that we're working on. Some are being submitted this week, and the permitting is another facet of getting the project ready for bidding and construction. So at a most basic level, this project is a pollution control project. A lot of it has to do with replacing aging infrastructure. And a lot of it has to do with meeting waste discharge requirements and improving the water quality discharge to Humboldt Bay. Some of our mechanical equipment is old and no longer performing as efficiently as it needs to be, and has reached the design end of design life. We have hydraulic capacity issues, accumulated vegetation growth, and we've had some water quality violations that these improvements will, in the future, hopefully not be an issue for the city any longer. Big part of this project will be moving to ultraviolet disinfection from our current chlorine disinfection, and for being more cost effective, in terms of performance of the plant. This is not is an increased a growth inducing type of upgrade where we can, say that we have increased the capacity of treatment in terms of the volume. It's still the same design rating for the treatment plant that we currently have, but we are going to really stimulate the performance and get a lot better treatment capacity just from what the current design is that's been degraded over the years. A lot of this has to do with eliminating disinfection byproducts associated with the use of chlorine and health hazards associated with storage of large volumes of chlorine cylinders. And moving our discharge from Butcher Slough, the current discharge location, to we call it the Brackish Marsh or Brackish Pond Outfall 003, which we designed that location when we did our McDaniel Slough enhancement project, which was completed in 2012. Basically, to get more beneficial use from the discharge from our treatment plant through the complex of McDaniel Slough and Janes Creek and the whole wildlife area to the west of the Arcata Marsh and Wildlife Sanctuary. So in the initial study and mitigated negative declaration, there's a extensive, or I should say, very clear and robust project description. It's really important to get your project description clear. Everything flows from that. And I want to go over a few of the highlights. But before I do, I just wanted to mention that, again, this project gets us in compliance with state water quality requirements. It's consistent with the general plan. It's a capital improvement project that's approved in the budget by the city council. And although the total cost is about $66 million, and it's budgeted in activity 67 for the design, permitting, and construction, the plan is for a two-phased approach. And starting with phase one, and the improvements in phase one have the potential to inform the final aspects of phase two. And that could change the price tag, but currently our design engineer, Carollo Engineering out of Walnut Creek, $66 million is the price that we've kind of based our project on thus far. Well, there'll be a combination of grants and low interest loans and cash financing from the city's wastewater utility reserve that has been anticipating this project. So I'm going to shift quickly to share this screen. Okay, is there the highlighted text appearing there? No?
We
No,
see your
maybe.
desktop.
Oh, sorry.
It's beautiful.
Go. Now is it
There you
there?
go. Yes.
Okay. Too many screens. Just quickly highlight the phase 1 aspects for proposed 2021 to be completed in 2024. There's a lot of bullets there, but I'm just going to quickly go through what we're planning to do: rehabilitate the headworks, primary clarifier, new grit removal, upgrade the digesters. These are all, you know, old pieces of infrastructure that are overdue for replacement. Some new aerators for the oxidation ponds, the electrical service, and the 9.8 million gallon per day peak flow ultraviolet disinfection system. Part of that is to be funded with a CDBG grant that we received. Whoops. Excavation and recontouring of the outlet for Hauser enhancement wetlands, which is very clogged up and needs maintenance, and some new pumping stations at Hauser enhancement wetland, and some sheet pile baffles into the oxidation ponds. And then quickly, and also we have the issues with the dikes, the perimeter dikes around the oxidation ponds and the treatment plant that need to be upgraded to meet the FEMA flood level for a 100-year storm. And then I mentioned the outfall, the new outfall, which is, you know, a big deal to move our outfall from Butcher Slough to McDaniels. Phase 2, and this is in the environmental document I have open, and I don't know why it's jumping, but apologize. Phase 2 involves an oxidation ditch, which is, they're just jumping again. And new clarifiers, and those are the primary new pieces of equipment for the phase 2. So I wanted to mention that this environmental document was sent to all the trustee and state agencies and circulated, and on the city's websites. Let's see if I can add this screen share. Okay. We have posted all the pertinent information. You're seeing the city's website now, I believe, right? For this project, including the environmental document, including all the background documents associated with it, and including the pre-design report, including the facilities plan, including the letter we received from Department of Fish and Wildlife, maps, and a lot of technical studies that went into this project to date. So I didn't want to go over the project in too much detail, but I wanted to make sure I covered the basics, just to frame the issue. But the good news is this is an environmental enhancement project. Our environmental document reflects that and analyzed everything that's necessary, from cultural issues to archaeological issues to floodplain issues to hydrology to biology to traffic, noise, dust, and all the elements that are required within an environmental analysis. And the mitigation measures are in my opinion, will confidently take care of to make sure there's no environmental impacts. I think we're going to be surveying for any listed plant species ahead of construction. Just to highlight the Department of Fish and Wildlife's concerns that the existing tide gate at the brackish marsh is a muted tide gate, and they just wanted to assure that we weren't going to allow that to plug up for fish passage back and forth. And we won't let that happen. That's our primary exit point for the wastewater in the future. So that has to be open and functioning, and it'll be part of the daily inspection by our operators. And that's pretty much the summary I had. I wanted to just turn it over to Engineer Class and Emily Benby if they had any more to add before we entertain questions from the council or the public on this project.
I've got no comments. Good job, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I thought that was pretty thorough, and I don't have anything to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions council members or members of the public have.
Great. Well, thank you. So now I will ask for questions from the council, starting with Vice Mayor Watson.
I don't have any questions. I do appreciate all the information that's available on the city website for the public. Thank you.
Councilmember Schaefer.
No questions at this time, but also again, really appreciate the very thorough rundown and all the hard work and process that has gone into this. So thank you.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions at this time.
And Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions at this time, but also echoing that I really appreciate that this information is available for the public and as well as your explanation for all of us. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't have any questions. Do we have any members of the public waiting to comment on this item?
There is no public comment on this item.
Okay, so unless there's final comments, I will entertain a motion from the council.
I will make a motion that the council adopt the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program and approve the Arcata wastewater treatment facility upgrade project.
I will second that motion.
Go ahead. Sarah seconded.
Thank you.
Great, we have a motion and a second. So with that, I will call the vote by roll call. Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we have old business item C, review of tenant eviction protections during COVID-19. May I have a staff report from City Attorney Diamond?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is a brief review item and to answer any questions you might have and to take any direction you might want to give. As you are probably all aware, the City Council adopted at the end of March tenant protections from temporary protections from evictions that would be caused due to non-payment of rent for COVID-19 related reasons. It was originally adopted to be only 90 days, and then the council subsequently amended it several different times to extend that time period. And in August, the state adopted legislation that preempted the city's provisions for residential tenancies and adopted instead statewide provisions protecting residential tenants from evictions for COVID-related financial hardships. And it lasts until February 1 of 2021. The council in September decided to extend the protections that it had already adopted for commercial tenancies. And those were extended until the February 1, 2021 timeline consistent with the state. So now we have two systems in which tenants are protected. One is under the state, and that has totally replaced anything the city of Arcata had previously. And under the state provisions, tenants may not be evicted for what are defined financial hardships from COVID-19. But the tenants are required to pay 25% during this time period and until February 1, 25% of the rent. And then they have to repay the entire amount by March 1 of 2021. And there are a couple of other nuances to the state law. There are exemptions for high income tenants. It's a fairly complicated eviction process, and so the state law delves deeply into the language in the state codes for eviction. Under the city's ordinance, now this applies only to the commercial tenants, the commercial tenants are protected temporarily from eviction until now, February 1, for unpayment of rent that arises from financial hardship from COVID-19. There are slight differences in the definition of what financial hardship is under the city's ordinance and under the state law. They're not large. They're very small. Although an important one does apply to when you need to stay at home, you need to miss work, and your income is reduced. You're staying at home to take care of children. In the city's ordinance for commercial tenants, the protection is only if you need to stay home with school-aged children. And under the state protections for now the residential tenants, it's extended for the need to be home for any aged child to provide in-home child care. We learned very recently that the state has, or some legislators have introduced new legislation. It was introduced on December 7, AB 15, and it, in its current form, would extend the state protections until the end of 2021. That's December 31 of 2021. And so we will watch that as it develops, and we will most likely come back to you in January with either an update, and then depending on what happens at the state level, we'll ask you for direction in terms of what you want to do with the existing ordinance, whether you want to extend the commercial tenancies, assuming that that is not preempted by whatever the new legislation is by the state, or amend it in any other way. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. If you want to provide direction now, we'll take notes. But that's basically where we are with the tenant protections.
Great, thank you. I'll now ask for questions from the council, starting with Councilmember Schaefer.
I have no questions at this time, but looking forward to talking about this more in January, I believe. Thanks.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions at this time.
Councilmember Goldstein.
I think my only question is, when we come back in January to revisit this, if there is no preemption from the state, will we also have a chance to give direction on residential renters, not just commercial?
No, because, well, I'm sorry, I spoke too quickly. I'm assuming that the new bill will be adopted in a similar fashion, and that it will preempt all local ordinances in their ability to regulate residential. I'm assuming that, but of course, if it doesn't happen, then yes, you could definitely give direction. So The preemption was, I think, intended from a policy perspective to provide uniform statewide protections rather than having just a hodgepodge of protections.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Goldstein. Vice Mayor Watson.
No questions. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions, but I also agree with Councilmember Goldstein that if there were to be some reason that there wasn't the preemption for residential, that we look at that in January as well. Let's see, do we have any members of the public waiting to comment on this item?
As a reminder to members of the public, if you are logged into the Zoom, click on raise your hand on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you have called in via phone, press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. Is there any public comment on this item? I am seeing no public comment on this item, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, any final thoughts from the council? Okay, great. Thank you. So now we will move on to new business. Item A, new council member reflections from public engagement opportunities throughout the campaign process. May I have a staff report from City Manager Deemer?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'll introduce this item quickly. We have, as a council, talked about some of the struggles that we've had in public engagement and receiving public comment, especially throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have historically found that campaigning brings in a lot of really diverse public input and reaches a number of people that never participate in other public forums. So we just wanted to have a little time and space on the agenda, not to put our new council members on the spot so much, but just while things were fresh, to share with staff and colleagues and the community just themes that arose from the public input that you received during your campaign process. And things that we should keep in mind and as we go into goal setting and budget planning for the next fiscal year.
Great, thank you. Why don't we start with Councilmember Atkins Salazar, and we'll go down from there.
So I think one of the things that I heard the most about was housing, and it was two-pronged, basically just more affordable housing, and especially for first-time home buyers that are, struggling. They may have two incomes but still can't afford a home. So, different types of housing that could vary in prices. And then just there was a lot of concern for the people without homes or houses. And I would say that was probably the biggest theme that I heard. And how does the city plan to help those people without homes? And I thought that there might be a little more diversity in that. Like some people might be against, providing housing or alternative housing for people, but that really wasn't the case. People seem to be pretty open-minded about the fact that there is no place for so many people to go. And so, we need to provide a place for them. So that was the biggest takeaway that I had. Second would have been the economy and just the concerns that citizens are having regarding COVID. The one thing I found surprising was for people that I engaged with were their responses about our policing. I expected that law enforcement would be a bigger issue considering everything that was happening, well, that still is happening, but that was going on while we were campaigning. But the people that I talked to felt, for the most part, felt like our police department does do a good job and isn't overly using their force. Try to put it into words. I thought, maybe it was depending on the demographic I was getting, because with my age and everything, I might be talking to different people, but I did talk to several younger people and people of color that really echoed the same thing. So I was surprised by that, because I thought I was going to get a lot more enthusiasm for police reform, and there definitely is. Like for reform, I definitely got that, to make changes, but there was less of an outcry for defunding in the people that I ran across.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Atkins Salazar. Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you. I'm really excited that we're all doing this because I think the three of us really reached probably slightly different groups, some of the same. And I think it's really a wonderful opportunity to give voice to the people of Arcata and everything we heard. So I'm really excited. I have a long list, so y'all can tell me to stop if it goes on too long. I really tried to put things into like thematic categories because I had so many comments. One of the things that I will say is that a lot of the demographic I talked to was younger folks. Being, I'm 26, and so I think that's just who naturally gravitated towards talking to me a lot. And so a lot of my conversations, because we're in a pandemic, happen virtually on Instagram. And so I tried to gather all of the responses that I've been getting over the last few months on Instagram. And then additionally, last night I put up on my Instagram, just so you all know, this is what we're talking about in the council today. Please let me know if there are like last minute thoughts you want me to incorporate. And I got a lot of responses. So people really do want to be heard. And so that is what I put at the first item I put on my list, is that people that I talked to were looking for a bit more transparency and communication from the city. They indicated an interest in wanting to engage and a desire to be involved in local government, but they found it hard to stay engaged and stay informed. And so I had some people bring up that like the website could be updated in some areas, although I think we saw earlier tonight, some projects are really well updated, but just so that folks can stay informed, read what's going on in the city, come to council meetings prepared, and also be able to access public comment, the public comment process a little bit easier. Maybe we could put up on our website something to make it a little bit clearer, how to engage, but people really want to be engaged. I think they just need help bridging that gap because I think it can feel a little bit inaccessible. Echoing what Stacy had been talking about, housing was huge. Housing came up again and again in so many different ways. It's both an issue of COVID-19 and an issue that's always constant. A lot of people just very directly saying they're worried about being able to afford their rent, stay in their housing, feeling concerned about that. So a lot of housing insecurity and concerns for our renters. I heard requests from people for stronger rent control, as well as ensuring that the current rent control and rent stabilization that we have is really supported and protected, because I really heard a lot of gratitude for just like, a lot of gratitude for what we have right now too, that it was really important to the people that it does affect. In terms of COVID-19 and housing, people talked about needing rent relief, and as we were talking earlier, a continuation of the eviction moratorium, things along those lines that we can help keep people housed that are currently housed. And then I think this is also really similar to what Stacy was saying, but affordable housing for middle income adults and families in terms of renting and buying that, but even with renting, that if you're a little bit above that income level, that you have a really hard time finding assistance, but you're still not making enough to really feel secure. And then along the lines of families, students that are also parents at HSU finding it hard to find housing for on campus for their family. So ways that we could better support families that are looking for housing and student parents. Accessible housing for disabled folks. I know, so I'm sorry, this is going on really long, but accessible housing for disabled folks. I had folks talk to me about that a lot of buildings are older, which I think is a treasured part of our city, but also can make it really hard to find a place to rent if you're disabled. And so when we think about what new buildings are going in, thinking about how can we make sure that these are accessible rentals for people with disabilities? They can't just be financially accessible, but literally they need to be physically accessible as well. And then of course, it was brought up a lot, and it's a really important issue, aid for houseless individuals. A lot of concern with winter conditions coming, and just, yeah, finding the ways that we can best support our houseless individuals currently in the short term, as well as get them housed in the long term. Support for mental health services and other public services for the houseless community. I did, with the people that I was talking to, hear a lot of desire for decreased police funding, and instead rerouting that funding into mental health services. That was something that came up a lot in my conversations. People really want to see less policing and more services from at least that was my experience in the conversations I was having. Let's see. Oh, and then lastly, along those lines was looking at how we address drug use in Arcata. A lot of people voice support for Hatcher, and harm reduction methods, and looking at how we can decriminalize people's means, the way that they are surviving, so that they're not being punished for just trying to survive. So that was all the housing stuff I tried to summarize. And then the last few things was Valley West needing more attention and support. That there is a larger issue of both supporting the housed folks that live in Valley West and improving their community, supporting their community, as well as finding resources for the houseless folks that often are living up in Valley West as well. But even on a basic level, I was hearing a lot of things like, we just need trash cans, we just need more streetlights. And so looking at Valley West, how can we make sure that the amount of love and effort we put into places like the Plaza are also going into Valley West, because they're also a part of our town, and yeah, they deserve the same amount of love we give the rest of this town. And then tribal rights, healthcare and health support for tribal members. I heard again and again, land back. I know that's a hard thing to talk about as a city council in a city, but something that may be worth looking at, and really giving more of a voice to our local tribal members, making sure that they feel heard and part of the conversation. Even things like looking at the street names and creek names that we have in our town, and who those are named after, and then all the way to things like land back. So those are, yeah, that was really a big one, as well as this separate topic, more support for our undocumented community, thinking about ways that we can make undocumented folks feel more supported and safer in our community, as opposed to feeling ostracized or attacked. I know we already have the first great step of being a sanctuary city, but where can we go from here? What's the next step we can take? Making things like the farmers market feel more accessible to undocumented folks. And then lastly, justice for Josiah. That cannot be left out. And it came up in so many conversations. It's super important. And yeah, we really have to pay attention to that and give it the attention that it deserves. So that was my long list. Thanks for listening. I'm sorry it was so long, but I really wanted to honor the conversations. People in Arcata took the time to be open and vulnerable with me, and I felt that I had a responsibility to relay that back out to you all. And so to everyone who was willing to share with me, if you're watching this, I just want to say thank you for being so honest and vulnerable and open with me. And I am done.
Thank you, and never apologize for representing the people of Arcata. So thank you for that. Councilmember Schaefer.
Okay, well, I'll quickly go through the list I have, but a lot of it really does echo what Stacy and Emily both have said already, and that we probably were talking to a lot of the same people and, making these connections. So I'll just go down my list that I made and just kind of echo some of these ideas. But definitely the one that I did hear come up the most was about addressing houselessness, and then also addressing the ability to offer more low income and that idea of middle income housing. I've been watching, the process of some of my own friends who are trying to buy houses for the first time, and, even off of 2 incomes of people that are teachers that work for the state that have, what should be a good paying job, still are struggling to find permanent housing in Arcata, which I think is a deterrent for a lot of, especially people that have just graduated from HSU, that are struggling to try to stay in this community and want to stay in this community, and oftentimes are not able to, just due to the fact that they cannot find affordable housing, they cannot buy, a good starter home. And so looking at kind of like what Councilmember Atkins-Salazar was saying about that 2-prong of this more affordable housing for regular everyday people, working class people in Arcata, and then also addressing the issue of houselessness and how the city kind of plans to help that. And what came up in my conversations a lot about houselessness as well were addressing kind of the plaza space, and then also the various parked cars, parked RVs, and kind of makeshift camps in Valley West as well. And so kind of like the 2 spaces that I heard come up a lot were, yes, the plaza, and as Councilmember Goldstein was saying, we address the plaza a lot, and we have a task force about it, and we've addressed a lot of these problems, but we don't give the same kind of necessarily consideration to Valley West. And so things that I heard specifically about Valley West were basic things like, better lighting, public restrooms, and trash cans at all of the bus stops and throughout these areas, and more kind of beautification of that area as well. I know that there's movements going forward with Carlson Park. I had the opportunity during my campaign to just kind of be like, I haven't been to Carlson Park, let's go down here, and walked my dog around for a while, and seeing just the various homeless camps in that area, and just kind of how there's not really signage and there's really no picnic tables or ability to use that area. And so kind of this idea that I talked to a lot of people about was, it's kind of, if you plant it, it'll grow, right? If you make these areas spaces where people want to be, and where people are having activities and can, host a picnic, can, go play on a playground or have a soccer game, and you create these opportunities within these more disadvantaged communities, then people will use those spaces, and they will be used for their intended purposes most of the time. So that's kind of just what I generally heard about Valley West. And then also adding, in addition to that, is safer bicycle and pedestrian pathways that connect Valley West with the downtown area and the other neighborhoods of Arcata. I know that's been important in various projects going forward, to kind of connect these subdivisions and to continue that trail out towards West End and stuff. So people just want to see that be continued. And also, kind of promoting, the city has, promoted the idea of, not driving as much, reducing your carbon footprint. It's kind of consistent with people of Arcata's values to have these connections. So, and then last thing I will add, and this could be of the demographic that we talked to, but I also heard, similar to Councilmember Goldstein, that there should be less policing and more community outreach and services to low income and houseless and minority communities, and especially again within Valley West, because a lot of what the policing is taking place is of, these nuisance crimes, and of just, rousing various homeless camps and people and their vehicles to, move out of the area. But then, we're left with that problem of where do they have to go, right? And so being able to create, kind of an infrastructure that isn't criminalizing homelessness, and also, eventually moving towards creating a safe space where they can go, whether that be a safe campsite. And I know there has been movement with that, with off of Boyd Road there, and, just continuing kind of these steps that the city has first started beginning to make it more just a better infrastructure for working with houseless individuals, connecting them with the resources that they need, and also providing them temporary safe space to go, and to not, be criminalized for the fact that they don't have a place to go. And so overall, and then the last thing I'll add is I did talk to a lot of people just generally about transportation, and also pedestrian and sidewalk improvements. and overall just creating a safer and more kind of human-centered downtown area, and promoting kind of a reduction in car traffic around the plaza, especially during events, farmers market, and then also kind of addressing by widening these sidewalks, providing improvements to various sidewalks and pedestrian paths for the needs of disabled people as well. So I think that's all I've got, and definitely echoes a lot of what we heard already this evening. So thanks.
Great. Thank you all for taking the time to relay and really try to encapsulate hundreds, if not thousands, of conversations that you had across Arcata. So really, really appreciate that. Let's see. Do we have any members of the public waiting to comment on this item?
There is no public comment on this item.
Okay. And then do we have any final comments from the council?
Yes, Mayor Pereira. I just wanted to echo that with what Councilmember Schaefer and Goldstein both said. Valley West was also brought up a lot to me, and it really opened my eyes and made me look at things differently. So that was a consistent theme. And adding the mental health aspect to the police definitely was. I think although my demographic maybe wasn't, I feel like the term defund can kind of be polarizing. Some people are gravitate towards that, and other people that makes them nervous. But once we got beyond that term, most people could agree that they would like to see more mental health services, and that so to spend more money on that. So I do think we're all pretty much on the same page with what we heard, just kind of different how people go about relaying that information. And then also one thing that we forgot to mention, I don't know if the other council members heard this, but several people did bring up to me the dog park, and that was something that we wanted, a destination dog park for Arcata. So.
Great, thank you. Any other final comments?
I just wanted to say, just in response to some of the housing feedback getting from the community, something that we could do to immediately try to stop the bleeding on that is bring back an Airbnb ordinance, like a cap on Airbnbs in the city we previously talked about. And some, the majority of the work's already been done on that by our staff. At the time, there wasn't council support, but maybe this council would see things differently. And Airbnbs, there's a school of thought that they can displace homeowners and take up precious housing stock. So it'd be great if we could bring that back in the future agenda.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see. Next, we will move to new business, item B. Receive a presentation from Maggie Gaynor of Zero Waste Humboldt. So thank you, Maggie, and the Zero Waste Humboldt team. Can we get you started?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for this time with you this evening. And I want to say congratulations to the new council members, and congratulations to all of you for getting ready for a new year as a whole new team. Just briefly, Zero Waste Humboldt is, it's kind of an odd duck. It's a nonprofit environmental organization that primarily works with businesses and local government. And I have to say that lovingly, we tend to make everybody feel a little bit uncomfortable. We're always nudging for new habits, behavior change, and to reduce waste. Should I move my slides up, or do you have them ready to set up?
I can pull them up, Maggie, or if you want to share your screen so you can control it. I wasn't sure. So
okay, let me give that a try.
Okay, and if it doesn't work, I'll be ready.
Okay. Share. Okay, so I'll just start off with this because it's coming up very soon. We have, well, just one step back. We brought the zero waste movement to Humboldt County around 2011, 2012, and then incorporated as a nonprofit serving the community late 2014. So since then, it's been almost every other year we have a training of 25 to 30 mostly local businesses. Other folks join in of a zero waste training. This is a little different, and we're proud of the work we put into it. In the past, it has been a lot more expensive. We've worked hard to raise money for partial scholarships, so it's more affordable, and the information, the training is localized to be more relevant and more convenient to take the training for small local businesses. So the first two webinars, January 12th and January 13th, are for everybody. And the last one, they're each an hour and a half. And the last one is for only those after they've taken the first two webinars that decide they want to commit to certification. And there's a process that goes on for a few months. And we have also adapted that from the national organizations to be really relevant and useful and affordable and easy for our small local businesses. You may all recognize Eddie Blakesley. He's been through our training before. Several local businesses have become what I would consider to be really great models of reducing waste. So let me move on from here. I'll try really hard for this to not be death by PowerPoint. Just a few main points I'll go over tonight, and then hopefully as any of these trigger interest for you, don't hesitate to contact us at Zero Waste Humboldt. These are priorities for just about any community across the country. I'm thinking very locally, and I've also thrown in a few points here that are specific to newly elected officials. So first off, inform yourselves about waste issues, waste problems, and the new field is sustainable materials management solutions and using zero waste methods. Honestly, most don't. There are so many issues that will be on your plate. Garbage is often not the one that rises to the top. And I want to urge you, if you ever have any questions, to contact us. And I'll point out a few sources of information that I would urge you to pay attention to. Second is reducing single-use plastics, top priority for a whole lot of reasons. We now know that not only is the damage done to the environment from their manufacture and their waste, we're learning every day more and more about the damage done to human health. Third, invest in systems for waste prevention and materials reuse. Our organization was founded as to provide better alternatives than recycling, which, you know, if you follow the old 3 R's, the new way for the first R, we found reduced to be too confusing, and learning from public health, everybody kind of gets waste prevention. So that's the first R. If over the past 50 years we had invested just a teeny bit, a tiny percentage of the billions that have been invested in public and private in recycling systems had gone into waste prevention and materials reuse, recycling would be not in the weakened condition that it is today. Reducing food waste and other organics is a top priority for the next several years. It is the largest portion of the tons and tons that we throw away in Humboldt County every year. Strengthen recycling systems. And, you know, I worked in the recycling industry for decades, for many years. And I admit I am one of those people who bought it hook, line, and sinker from the plastics petrochemical industry. So after 50 years, my feelings aren't hurt. And I think it's a good idea that we really reevaluate and update and really take a fresh look at what we're doing. The weak link for curbside mixed material collection has been public education. When you go from such a radical sorting it to throwing it all into one container, a very different system, we needed from the get-go, from day one, to just unrelenting, consistent public education. Now, the contamination level between 20 and 25% is so high and problematic that it's more like crisis communications than public education. Closing the loop and creating local end-use markets for recyclable materials. The program that helped local governments do that quite a bit from the state, the Recycling Market Development Zone program, several years ago after the crash in 2008 and some of the impacts on the state budget, it was defunded. And it has not really been available to help places like Humboldt County and small businesses get started. There's still an unbelievable amount of creativity here and entrepreneurial interest, and this is something that we need to do. Reduce construction and demolition waste. Deconstruction has become more and more sophisticated in the past 10 years, rather than the wrecking ball or just the smash the building down. They've become better and better at deconstruction, and there's some new improvements in construction waste too. It's a very difficult one, but it's got to stay in the list of priorities. Lastly, I'll just talk a little bit very briefly about there are rays of hope and what keeps us going. And it's been exciting to see since we first got started, when every call was a cold call and people were even sometimes argumentative about zero waste. And the people who wanted to be supportive often thought it was sort of like recycling on steroids. It's not, and there's more widespread acceptance and more understanding. Not everybody, but we really see the changes happening. So these are my notes. I just thought I would show them to you as I speak. So plastics, recycling and composting have been used by the manufacturers of single-use products and packaging. To convince consumers that they're good for the environment. And we have really been bamboozled. And all those years that I was working to promote recycling and with plastics, it's a kind of a hard pill to swallow. So I have some suggestions for you that can help you without me going into a lot of detail right now about this, but understand this better. Much of what we have been told over the years about plastics recyclability and compostability has not been true. There's a lot of green marketing, greenwash. I'll just bluntly state that it is problematic economically and environmentally if recyclables have to be transported long distances overseas to market. And there are a lot of reasons why that is a true statement. So compostable, biodegradable, bioplastics, all these different terms that the plastics industry has thrown around means that the plastics just break down into smaller bits into the environment. They will never disappear or miraculously turn into a rich soil amendment. And so the state has passed a law about microplastics. So there are a lot of popular misconceptions and things to do about them. The petrochemical industry's propaganda this year and misinformation really seized upon the public's fears about the spread of COVID-19. I've really put a lot of time researching this to be able to answer questions for businesses. And one of the problems is that many businesses have gone to the wrong sources for their information. You want to go to the CDC and USDA and EPA, Food and Drug Administration, your local public health environmental services department for the information, not necessarily the California Restaurant Association. And so Yeah, a lot of the research shows that of all the different surfaces studied, wood, metal, glass, cloth, many different kinds. Guess which one the virus lingers the longest on? Plastic. So next, returnable, refillable, reusable systems are where the excitement and the new territory to move into is. They're far better for the environment than recycling and composting. Just last week, December 7th, a new report came out from Zero Waste Europe called Reusable versus Single-Use Packaging. They compared 32 life cycle assessments of 11 different types of packaging. The report reveals that reusable glass bottles produce 85%. Now, I'll reiterate, there's a system for reuse. It's the old return to returnables. So returnable glass bottles, that system produces 85% fewer carbon emissions than single-use glass bottles, and 75% fewer carbon emissions than plastic, and 57% fewer carbon emissions than aluminum cans. So this is where we're focused on at Zero Waste Humboldt, probably more than anything, are getting some of these types of systems in place, especially with the where recycling is not working right now. Waste prevention is our #1 top priority and requires upstream redesign, proactive planning at the point of purchase. And that means you and I when we get ready to go to the grocery store, and it means at the workplace if you're in charge of purchasing and communicating with suppliers. A combination of a lot of different things, changes in business practices, individual lifestyle choices, and new legislation is slowly developing waste prevention solutions. 3 sources for you to inform yourself. Read your city's contract with your hauler. Ask questions about it, understand it. Read Arcata's Zero Waste Action Plan. Watch Plastic Wars, a really eye-opening PBS Frontline documentary. I'll tell you, and it's very current. It was released this year, March 2020. It's 54 minutes. What has happened is some of my old cronies who were the really head of the single-use plastics manufacturing industry have retired over the 80s and 90s. And it's like they all took a truth serum, so that when these NPR and PBS journalists came to interview them for some recent documentaries, they all told the truth. And so I just urge you, as council members, take a moment and an hour and watch this film. Recycling to reduce the high percent of contamination of curbside. I was just in a local task force meeting today with Emily, and they're just starting to talk about a more countywide effort to message the public about what is recyclable and what isn't recyclable. We say, consistent feedback is the breakfast of champions. We need transparency in recycling operations and marketing. If you see a big container out in front of your grocery store full of plastic bags, I ask, hey, what's going to happen to all of this? And they answer, real blank look on their faces, it's going to be recycled. And I press further, they don't know what that means or where it's going. If you don't know where it's going, what the market is, and what kind of product it's going to be manufactured into, it's questionable if it's being recycled. Local recycling market development. The circular economy never was intended to go all the way to China or Asia or other poorer countries of the world. And so we really need to develop local end use markets like our former Fire and Light. And there are little small examples of entrepreneurial activity that we want to foster and encourage. It really, using recyclable material, a local resource, they're not redwood trees, it's a secondary resource. Using them as part of the efforts to rebuild our local economy after COVID-19 is important. And Zero Waste Humboldt will be talking more with the Prosperity Network, our economic development professionals this coming year. Food waste, as I said, is a really significant percentage by weight of everything that we throw away in Humboldt County and nationally. And it is a national disgrace because we throw away so much, and then we have so many people who go hungry. The city has done a lot, and has Emily worked hard and got a grant funded. I think that food waste reduction project has been, like so many things, the effort has been disrupted by this past year and COVID. And then lastly, construction and demolition debris. Some of the new efforts of modular construction, new efforts in deconstruction, some of the equipment they're cherry picking so they can bring down a building more and more efficiently and more cost effectively. Monitoring and enforcement is difficult in that field, but it should remain priority. This is just a quick graphic. People are making the shift. It is becoming more and more normal. It's what people do now. They're shifting from something that was a habit that was single use to now a habit that was reusable. And that puts a grin on our faces. Just lastly, we have, as I mentioned to you, we've really noticed a big change when people contact us with questions or we call someone. It's no longer a complete cold call. They've become to understand zero waste. We keep trying to help people understand the waste prevention priority. So we do get emails mostly, is this recyclable? Is that recyclable? Is this recyclable? And our answer is always, the first question is, what could I have done differently to avoid using this single-use plastic doodad in the first place? One quick example is we have a refill, not landfill network. Arcata is one of the local governments participating. We worked hard to raise a bunch of money to buy 10 water bottle refill stations and got local government partners, 2 high schools, and the rest are all local governments, mostly in Parks and Rec buildings. And this is a good example because it's not always easy to measure your progress. Every one of those has a clicker, a counter. And so once a year we check in. This year was not a normal year, but what we have come to learn is roughly 50,000 single-use plastic water bottles are avoided in Humboldt County every year from our waste stream because people are using those. We have legislative action, a little bit at the national level. More is coming at the state California level. And we may from time to time contact Karen or council and say, we really want you to, as a city, send in a letter of support for this particular legislation. We have noticed that, and this is I'm by far the oldest person on our board. This fits all of our board members, but the age demographic, 20 to 40 population, their lifestyle preferences, attitudes, and decisions are changing. It's different, and it's really positive. There is more of an affinity for simple living, minimalism. The whole thing of do-it-yourselfers, repair stuff, and give new life, new use for something you have has become more and more popular. I'm hoping we'll do everything we can to keep that going. And then entrepreneurial reuse and recycling-based manufacturing. As hard as it is to start a business in these times, people still do it. And one good example is right there in the middle, an artist in Eureka, Jennifer, plastically uniquely recycled. She takes large quantities of pill bottles from all the pharmacies and makes them into jewelry. So that's just a real rapid fire main things to look for. If you have, I've listened to you talk about you're touching base with or getting input from the community as you campaigned for your seat on council. And if you hear of people who have a particular interest in this field, send them our way. We're always looking for volunteers. And we hope that within the next, well, I'll say within the next 6 months, we'll be hiring. And that will be exciting for us. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Maggie. Let's see. Let's see if there's any questions from the council, starting with Vice Mayor Watson.
I don't have any questions. Thank you very much, Maggie.
Thank you.
Let's see, Councilmember Goldstein.
I don't have any questions, but thank you so much for your presentation.
Councilmember Schaefer.
I do actually have one question. What work, because I feel like I've talked about this with you before in a presentation that you gave to our Rotaract Club. But what kind of steps have you guys taken or have you started working with reducing waste from the cannabis industry locally?
You know, we've begun the conversations carefully, and we're doing our research right now. We're learning from some other regions. It's in the baby stages, and I'm glad you brought it up. Once we have staff, then we'll be able to start moving a little faster on some of these things. The goal for our webinars for businesses in particular is to start with for all businesses, and once we get that down, then we'll be adapting it for specific business sectors, and that is one of the first ones.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, I know that there is such a large amount of plastic waste that comes from dispensaries and also from, you know, production as well. And so just to see the opportunities to be able to use recycled plastic to recreate that packaging and be able to recycle that packaging is a cool thing. And I think, you know, Humboldt County can lead the way on that. So awesome. Thank you, Maggie. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar, any questions?
Sorry, having technical difficulties. No questions, but I just wanted to thank Maggie for her presentation. And I'm particularly excited and interested in closing the loop and finding new uses for things such as Fire and Light did and the plastic uniquely recycled. I think that fits so well with who we are in Humboldt. And we have so many creative people and makers that I'm excited about that end of it. And I just appreciate you taking the time. Every time I listen to you, I learn something new and always feel a little bit convicted to re-examine my practices. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple comments. Maggie, first of all, thank you for all your work that you've done around zero waste in our community. I just also want to really give you a lot of credit for helping us get our zero waste action plan across the finish line and making that happen and doing a lot of really fantastic community engagement. So I want to publicly recognize you for that work. It could not have happened without you. And then just as a representative serving on the Humboldt Waste Management Authority, I did want to let my colleagues know that we are doing a waste characterization study that is currently in progress. And I believe later this spring, if not early summer, we'll have some more information about what that looks like, and hopefully that'll inform some future programs at a regional level that hopefully Zero Waste Humboldt will be a part of. So I just wanted to give that update to the colleagues that there's definitely opportunities for us to be paying close attention to this work. Let's see, do we have any members of the public waiting to comment on this item?
There is no public comment on this item.
Could I make one more point?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been a consultant to many local governments over a 25-year period, Gaynor and Associates, all over the Western states. all over California and even back east. And every time I would come home and I would think how grateful I was for the city of Arcata and its staff. And I hesitated to say this because I don't want to cry. But they're smart, they're dedicated, and in this field in particular, I remember Julie Neander's first day, and this is a time when Mark and folks are getting ready to move on. Emily, you've just got a great staff, all the support staff, and I'm just really sincere that it's a great local government to work with, both as a consultant and as an activist in the community.
Thank you, Maggie. No, our staff really do a stand-up job on this work, so thank you for recognizing them as well. Okay, any final comments from the council? Okay, let's see. So next we have oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda this evening. Please raise your hand if you are on the Zoom webinar, or press *9 now if you are on a phone line and you would like to make a public comment. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. When it is your time for public comment, the clerk will unmute you and invite you to speak. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak at public comment?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to council and staff reports. Item A, report by Director of Community Development, Loya, on the state requirement for vehicle miles traveled (VMT) to be used in California Environmental Quality Act CEQA review. I'll turn it over to you, Director Loya.
All right, thank you. Good evening. I'm David Loya, the Director of Community Development, and I'm presenting with Joe Mateer, our Senior Planner. First, I wanted to welcome new council members Atkins, Salazar, Schaefer, and Goldstein. Looking forward to working with you all. And tonight we're going to be presenting a sort of high-level primer on vehicle miles traveled. Before I get started, though, I want to make sure that we set the next date for Maggie to come back and talk to us in particular about what a great staff we have. That was very nice. Thank you. I am going to try and start my PowerPoint. Sometimes this works. Can you see the, excuse me. Okay, can you see the full presentation mode, or can you see the slide advance mode?
You see like full presentation mode with the next slide.
Okay.
Showing up.
You're in notes mode.
Or notes mode, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Let me try that again. Sorry. Still can't quite figure out when Zoom allows it to go to full mode versus.
I find I have to start in notes mode and then start the webinar. So you look good there. You just have to go full screen slideshow. Yep, perfect.
Good. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to do this vehicle miles traveled primer. Just to start, I wanted to point out, kind of the topics that we're going over. I'm not going to read through all these, but we really want to get oriented to what vehicle miles traveled is and why we're using it now and how it relates to accomplishing our greenhouse gas reduction goals, as well as some of our infill goals. And then I want to end by telling you a little bit about the regional work that's going on in this field. So first off, what is VMT? Really simplistic cartoon version of what VMT is. VMT, vehicle miles traveled, it's literally what the name says. It's a measure of all the distances traveled for each trip basis. And so if you leave from your home, you go 2 miles to work, you drive 2 miles back from work to your home, then you drive a mile and back to the store. Your sum total there would be 6 miles. And so vehicle miles traveled is essentially the sum of the miles traveled between destinations. Now it's measured in a per capita per year, and it's a total travel for all land uses associated with a particular project and the way that we're using it here. This isn't a new measure, although it is new to CEQA. And the way that CEQA tries to use it is as a relationship between sources and sinks. For example, between jobs and housing. Sources being where the cars are coming from, and sinks being where the cars are driving to. Now, unlike the cartoon here, the way that this tool is used, it's not used on a individual car by car basis or a household by household basis. It's derived from models that essentially take into account anticipated overall miles traveled on any particular project basis. So in a sense, what it's trying to do is to measure the environmental impact related to motor vehicle use, really linking the motor vehicle usage to greenhouse gases and greenhouse gases to environmental impact. So why use VMT for the California Environmental Quality Act? Why are we using this to evaluate the impacts to the environment? This is a graphic from the city's greenhouse gas inventory from 2015, and you can see that transportation takes up 70% of the greenhouse gases emitted in the city of Arcata. This is real common across the state and across our county. So transportation is a huge impact. Basically, greenhouse gases are bad for the environment. CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act, is intended to disclose project environmental impacts. And so the linkage between transportation, the number of miles that you're driving, the amount of greenhouse gases you're producing, and the environmental impact are closely related. There are several bills that were adopted over the course of the past 10 years that essentially said, look, we need to bake vehicle miles traveled into CEQA to use that as the basis for environmental impact. Whereas before we used level of service. Level of service, and Joe's going to get into a little bit more about this, but level of service is essentially a measure of how long do you have to wait? How inconvenient is it for you in your vehicle? And the result of level of service is to speed those wait times up. That runs exactly counter to impacts to the environment related to vehicles traveling miles. So level of service puts more vehicles on the road to make things quicker. And so really in the legislation that developed this law and also in the state executive orders that have come out, there's a clear linkage between vehicle miles traveled, greenhouse gas production, and jobs, housing, and services balancing. And a lot of that balancing needs to be done through land use regulations. Land uses are regulated by California Environmental Quality Act, and so that's why we bake this in. When you have an impact that results in higher vehicle miles traveled than a threshold, then that's considered a significant impact on the environment, and you have to adopt mitigation measures. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. Joe's going to pick up with level of service.
Yes, good evening, council members. Joe Matier, Senior Planner with the City of Arcata Community Development. This picture shows a lot of grid. Level of service is a measurement on the transportation routes. How effective is it? And it is within our general plan, the circulation pattern of the general plan. So level of service is the method to rate how roads and intersections function. It typically is a letter grade from A to F. A being a road capacity is fine. There are no wait times, easy to move from one area to another. Not like the picture we have here. A poor level of service is a D or F and suggests more roads and wider roads are needed to improve the level of service. More roads increase the number of cars and encourage longer commutes that increase the greenhouse gases. That's bad. The level of service is no longer considered an environmental impact. It was before previously, but now with the vehicle miles traveled, it's not. The level of service, however, can still be used in community designs. We don't need to throw it out. We still can use it. We can use it when we look at our transportation improvements and how they're located, where they're located to other land use activities, such as housing or commercial development. Next slide, please. The vehicle miles travels mitigation measures. If we review a project and it is determined to have a significant environmental impact based on the vehicle miles traveled, mitigation measures are required to reduce those impacts. Mitigation measures need to reduce the vehicle miles traveled, and they can include new bus routes, bus stops, or increase the frequency of routes. The state has identified that including affordable housing in projects reduces the vehicle miles traveled. A recent project incorporated a ride-share program. Another project included employee incentives for carpooling or use of alternative transportation. So those were ideas that were incorporated into the project that could reduce the vehicle miles traveled based on the project itself. Next slide, please. Challenges with rural vehicles miles traveled. Many impacts and mitigation measures affect urban and rural communities differently. Some of the differences are related to how to evaluate a project's impact on the vehicle miles traveled and how to mitigate those impacts. Most existing models are based on urban and metropolitan areas. Rural land uses are not clustered as much. There are some retail items not available in Arcata, and our citizens need to travel outside that area for those items. A new project that minimizes the need to get in a car and travel to get those items could lower the existing vehicle miles traveled, or improve the transportation in the area, lower the greenhouse gases. So not all projects are going to be need to be mitigated. They can actually assist in us meeting some of the statewide goals and local goals of reducing greenhouse gases. This slide, the previous slide, I was just going to show that the urban area, the green area, is kind of the core where a lot of the goods and services are available. That's your high density, so employment opportunities are, housing is located. So a new project in that green area is most likely going to have low VMT impacts. Whereas on the red, the outside, the periphery of it, projects will more likely than not increase the vehicle miles traveled. Now that's not always the case, as I said before, is that it's possible a project could reduce those miles traveled. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on. The next slide is yours, Director Loya.
Okay, thank you. I guess before I leave this slide, I'll mention too that, in our area, just sort of driving home the point about how it's challenging to implement. In our area, if you have a project, an infill project, one that theoretically in a setting like the picture on the screen here was in the core center of the town and maybe would be proximal to other services and goods that those new residents would need. In our town, we may have an infill project, but there are goods and services that you're still going to have to drive to Eureka for example. And so that's part of the reason why they VMT present challenges for rural communities. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the regional VMT collaboration that we've been doing in order to sort of overcome some of these challenges, trying to parse out what would be the VMT impact if you did a project in Arcata without having a region-wide model, recognizing that we do need to drive to other areas to get goods and services. So we've been working with the County of Humboldt and the Humboldt County Association of Governments in particular, along with other jurisdictions, to discuss what a regional vehicle miles traveled model might look like so that we all agree on certain metrics. This would have many benefits. One, we'd have a standard model that was used across the region. And so if a developer comes in and deals with Eureka, or they deal with the county, or they deal with Arcata, it's all the same model. They don't have to go out and model something differently. They don't have to ask what the thresholds are going to be. They would know because we have a regional model. Number two, when it comes to the mitigation measures, whether it's an alternative transportation associated with buses in the region or trails, if we had an integrated system of mitigations that was county-wide, region-wide, as a project came in and if it was subject to those mitigations, we would have a plan of action for how we'd implement those region-wide. And so in a couple of weeks, you're going to be presented by the staff from the Humboldt County Association of Governments, and they'll be telling you a little bit about the REAP funding that they have and some of the collaboration work that we've been doing at the regional level that Humboldt County Association of Governments has been hosting. And the VMT model is one of the topics that we've been discussing, is using the funds that they've gotten through this REAP funding handed down through the state. They have about $700,000 they're looking to figure out how to do a project that is regional that will increase housing. And so we've been making the pitch at the staff level that developing this regional model for vehicle miles traveled and also using some of the money to finish off the climate action planning work that we've been doing regionally would be a good use of those REAP funds. In addition, Caltrans is obviously very invested in understanding, modeling, and developing tools for VMT, since they are a transportation organization. And then I guess lastly, I'll say on the VMT issue that we are going through right now a major general plan update. We'll bring that to you at a special meeting soon and talk a little bit more in depth about that. But this VMT collaboration work that we're doing, if we can get a region-wide model, that'll really help with our general plan update and being able to assess the impacts of the next 20 years worth of growth based on those models. And then I'll just leave you with Mark texted me right after his presentation was closed out and you all voted on approving the treatment plant that he forgot to mention. He'd like to extend an invitation to each of you to come take a tour of the wastewater treatment plant. And so here's his contact information, and you can reach out to him. Oh, here's his phone number, and he'd be happy to take you on a tour. So that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer some, and I think there may be some public comments as well on this item.
Great, thank you both. I will now ask for questions from the council, starting with Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
I don't have any questions at this time, but thank you, Director Loya, for all of that information.
Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions at this time, but thank you so much.
Councilmember Schaefer.
No questions at this time, thanks.
Vice Mayor Watson.
No questions, thank you.
No questions as well, and it looks like we might have a member of the public that'd like to weigh in on this item.
Yes, we do have a member of the public. Screen name is Colin. Colin, go ahead and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Council, my name is Colin Fisk. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. I wanted to thank Director Loya and Senior Planner Mateer for presenting this item and just really underline how important of a shift this is in terms of how we think about transportation impacts, for all of the reasons that they described, as well as for other reasons that, vehicle miles traveled are also correlated not just with greenhouse gas emissions, but also with other emissions, with water quality impacts, with safety impacts, all the kinds of impacts that are associated with driving, where level of service kind of leads you in the opposite direction towards exacerbating those impacts. So I think this is a really critical change. I wanted to respond briefly to Senior Planner Mateer's comment that while it's true that state law doesn't prohibit us from using level of service, continuing to use it in our planning, for all of the reasons that we're changing away from level of service in CEQA, we really shouldn't be using it in our management or planning documents either. And so I hope that we can step away from level of service as a planning goal, in the general plan and other documents as well. And my final comment is that as far as how we manage VMT in the CEQA context, I think it's really important to understand that the significance of impacts as they're assessed depends on how we assess what we determine are the appropriate thresholds. And if we set those thresholds based on existing VMT per capita in Arcata, then I think we can make appropriate mitigations necessary, as opposed to setting them on a county-wide basis, which will make it look like nobody living in Arcata has significant VMT impacts, which is really not accurate because we're not setting the appropriate comparison. So I talked quite a bit with Director Loya about this, but if anyone has any other questions or things they want to talk to me about, I'm happy to do that too. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin.
Thanks, Colin. Any final comments from the council before we move on to our next staff report? Okay, thank you. So now I will turn it over for an update by City Engineer Kotri on the Old Arcata Road Rehabilitation and Pedestrian Bikeways Improvements Project.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, staff, and member of the public. First of all, welcome new council members. My name is Netra Khatri. I'm city engineer. I will just be giving you a quick overview and update on the Old Arcata Road project. Let me share my screen so I can start doing the slides. Okay, so are you able to see my screen? Or
You're good, Netra.
Yeah.
okay, thank you. So, as you know, maybe not all of you, Old Arcata Road is one of the major capital CIP projects for the city. City has been working on this project for a while. As you will be hearing about this project in coming year in 2021, so I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the project. I won't go in detail. My slide is not working here. Okay, here. I'll just go over quick project history, how we got here. I'll just go over what project involves, what is the current status of the project, and what is the project timeline, and what all steps we need to take to complete the project. So project history, how we got here. In 2008 and 2011, city attempted to do a Old Arcata Road improvement project, and we had designed the project and we wanted to do a construction. However, at that time, we were not able to complete the project because the proposed project was not acceptable to the Bayside community at that time. And the reason for that was we did not seek the input from public when we designed the project. So that's why we were not able to complete the project at that time. So we didn't do anything at that time. However, we just did maintenance work to fill the potholes over time. In 2014 and 15, again, we got some feedback from public at our Transportation Safety Committee that the road condition is not good and it's not safe and we need to do improvements to the Old Arcata Road. So we got a recommendation from staff and the Transportation Safety Committee, and we allocated some funds to do the project or restart the project. And the idea or the goal was to do a community-based planning and design and start the project. So with that in mind, we hired local transportation planners and engineers to help us with the process. And the process took at least, I would say, more than a year. In that process, we did 3 workshops, 1 walk audit, 1 pop-up demonstration. Over 285 people participated in that design shed, we called it at that time. So the key feedback we got was most of the people wanted to maintain the rural characteristic of the Bayside community. Mostly everybody wanted to have safety improvements, and people do like using the separate path, which is along the Old Arcata Road on some portion of the street. Desired improvements through that design shared process was everybody wanted to have traffic calming. People wanted to have pedestrian walkways. They wanted to have central double yellow central lines so people will not overtake on the streets. They wanted safer crosswalks. They wanted safety crossing at schools. They wanted to improve pavement markings at a school zone. And most important, they wanted to have some improvements at the intersection of Jacoby Creek Road and Old Arcata Road. And definitely, everybody wanted to have a bike-friendly improvements. Overall, desire of the committee was, a few of the people wanted to leave the road the way it is. However, I would say more than 95% of the people wanted to do improvements. Again, the focus was mainly on bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and also to reduce the speed. Most of the people do wanted to have a separate path which is away from the travel lanes. And also, there is a Jacoby Creek School along the road, and they wanted improvements in front of the school. So we completed our design shared process and we compiled and we prepared a report. And next step was in 2018, I believe, we hired local transportation experts, designer to help us with the project. And we gave them all the reports prepared from the design charrette and told them we need to have all this comment that we have received incorporated in the design. So currently we are in the design phase, I would say environmental / design phase of the project, and we have our consultants on board to help us with that. So before I go more on design, I just wanted to go over the project limits. Project involves improvements along the old Arcata Road between just south of Buttermilk Lane and Jacoby Creek and the old Arcata Road intersection. All the proposed improvements will be done within a public right-of-way. Project has the intersection improvement I just mentioned. Project does have 3 schools in the vicinity of the project. Next slide. So now I will go over the project alignment and how that looks. So I will go section by section to show how the road will look like in a section when you are facing towards south or west. So I'll start with the section how it will look right at the just south of Buttermilk Lane on the old Arcata Road. So this is the location. So just as for the reference, here on this side, there's a Buttermilk Lane, and this is the intersection of Jacoby Creek Road and Old Arcata Road. So this is how the section looks like, or it will look like. The plan is to improve the whole road. There will be 2 10-foot wide travel lanes. There will be buffer on either side, and there will be 2 bike lanes on either side. Next is I'm just going south or west, or you can call it southwest, just in front of Anwick Road on Old Arcata Road, how the street will look like there. Again, we'll be doing the whole reconstruction of the street, and there will be 10-foot wide travel lane and the bike lane. However, there will be an existing walkway which is already there. It will be improved with a new concrete structure. Going a little bit up, right just south of Jacoby Creek School. The street will look like there's already existing a walkway on one side, or at least on one side. We will be completely improving the street with 2 travel lanes, 2 bike lanes, and a bioswale buffer and a new walkway 6-foot wide. And going more south, there is an existing sidewalk, at least on the north side. So we will be improving the whole street, reconstructing it with 2 10-foot wide travel lane and bike lane, and a new sidewalk on the south side. Also, as a part of the project, there are 2 streets along. There are more streets, but Highland Street is one of them. There will be some improvements on that. Pavement will not be overlaid, or there will be no new pavement. However, we will be adding a sidewalk on, at least on the north side. Same thing for the Bayside Road. Bayside Road is not a city road, it's a county road. However, as a part of the project, we will be improving Bayside Road by fully reconstruction and adding at least a 6-foot wide paved shoulder, which does not exist there right now. And this is just a concept of how the intersection improvement at the old Arcata Road and Jacoby Creek will look like. This is not complete design. This is just in concept how it will look if we do a roundabout at that intersection. So as I said, we have consultants on board, and in the last 2 years, we've been working on a lot of environmental documents that's needed for the project. So we have completed, I would say, 90% of the environmental document. The last piece remaining is a critical one, archaeological and historical survey report, which we did initially completed and submitted to the Caltrans early this year. However, we received some comments back, and we are trying to address those. Our goal is to submit finalized document to Caltrans by early next year. And once that's complete, then we will be out of the environmental phase of the project. Total project cost based on current design or design which was at the preliminary design is $4.1 million. Most of the construction funding will be done via State Transportation Improvement Program. Remainder will be done with Highway Infrastructure Program, and then the remaining funds will be coming from cities, street funds / Measure G funds. So today we are here almost at the end of our environmental phase. Our goal is to finalize all the documents for the environmental phase, complete it, seek funding for design, which will be early next year, and finalize the design by end of next year or early next year, and start the construction in summer of 2022. So this is a quick update on the project, just an overview. Additional information we have a project website. You can go there and look for all the documents on the project that we have done so far. It's on the project website. So with that, I will take any questions if you have on the project. And thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we'll ask questions from the council, starting with Councilmember Schaefer.
No questions, but thank you, very thorough. And man, I wish it looked like that when I went to Jacoby Creek School. So it looks like a great update that's being done, and that safety is necessary. So thank you.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions, but thank you for the presentation.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Yeah, thank you so much, but no questions at this time.
And Vice Mayor Watson.
No questions. Thank you, Nitra.
No questions as well. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this item? It looks like we do.
We do have a member of the public that would like to comment. Screen name Colin. And are you unmuted, Colin?
Yes, I am. Thank
Okay,
you.
you will have 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to briefly thank City Engineer Khatri for all of his work on this project. I think this will be a great improvement for the bike and pedestrian infrastructure in the area. And my only other comment for consideration, as the city is moving more towards, it seems, implementing roundabouts as a solution to intersection problems. One issue that I think needs to be at the top of mind is for pedestrians with vision impairments. Roundabouts can be very difficult to navigate because there's no way to ensure that that a vehicle is going to stop. And so I think we need to think that through and figure out how to ensure that it's usable for all pedestrians when we're making these designs. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin.
There is no more public comment.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to other council and staff reports. Do we have any other staff reports before we move to council?
I think we've covered a lot of topics tonight. I wish you all a wonderful holidays. Yeah, and look forward to your updates.
Let's start with Vice Mayor Watson.
I don't have any updates this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Goldstein.
I don't have any updates. Thank you.
Councilmember Schaefer.
No updates, and thank you everybody who has presented tonight. Lots of information coming in, so this has been very helpful.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Nothing to report.
The only thing I'll just note, you have to give a lot of credit to Councilmember Atkins Salazar for working with Arcata Main Street on, I can't remember the exact name, but the really great effort to encourage holiday lights in our neighborhoods, in our community, and really to embody that holiday spirit. So Arcata Main Street's doing a lot of outreach to get folks to participate. know, Eureka also is making a big push, and there's no need for us to be competitive in the holiday season, but I'm definitely excited to see what happens. In terms of seeing the different lights that are getting set up. I was asked to look at the lights and present some awards. So if any of you on the council or anyone in the community, has nominations of, oh, you have to look at this house, please let me know. I'll just be wandering around Arcata looking for a holiday spirit in light form. So I just really want to give recognition to Arcata Main Street and Councilmember Atkins Salazar on that effort to really, in a time where we have to be physically separated, but still representing that holiday spirit. And please, continue to shop in Arcata safely. Let's see. And next, dates of future meetings. Select a date and time for a special meeting near the end of December 2020. I'm going to turn this over to Karen about how we want to approach this.
Okay. So initially, when we recognized that we were going to have 3 new councils coming on board, everyone started with sort of their huge list of everything that we needed to update you with. So, but there were 3 areas that sort of rose to the top, one of them being really a deeper review of the city's budget because of the real constraints. This is not a normal year for us. The second is the wastewater treatment plant project, of which you actually got some overview of tonight. And the third is the process around sort of the updates around our general plan. We actually are kicking some of that off with a visioning session tomorrow night that's been advertised to the public. And then some of the infill strategic plans that are happening in community development. So those are sort of 3 topics. Now, what you got a flavor of tonight was actually quite a few presentations. So I think this could go a couple of ways. One, none of those are hugely time sensitive until we really get into kind of budget prepping for next year. So we could hold a meeting. There just happened to be 5 Wednesdays in December. So looking at, a meeting on that 5th Wednesday that doesn't typically conflict with a lot of other meetings that you have sometimes is an option, or anytime, next week or the week after, I would say the week after Christmas is what we're looking at, like the 29th, 30th, right in there. Or this meeting certainly could be pushed out into January or February of next year. Or alternatively, we could take those 3 topics and just do them at the end of each meeting as a staff update. We won't do them all in one plus a council meeting, but we could take them singly. So it's really just the will of the council and how quickly and how many questions new council members are receiving from the public and feel like you need that information.
Thank you for that context. So I will start with our new council members to see what your preference is of how you'd like to receive some more of this background information. Let's start with Councilmember Goldstein.
I feel like we're getting a lot of new information, which has been really great. I'm really appreciative to everyone who did a presentation this evening and everyone I've been meeting with this week. But I think I personally would rather wait till January or go with the idea of putting a little bit in each future council meeting, just because I'm absorbing a lot right now. I don't know how the other new council members feel, but I think my preference would be just to hold off just a little bit to give me a little time to make sure I'm fully absorbing everything.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Schaefer.
I would be really happy to meet in this last week of December, mostly for that my personal work schedule is a little bit lean at that time. However, if it is the will of everybody else, I'm perfectly happy, pushing it off to another day. Or I like the idea of just tacking, 1 presentation at the end of the council meetings. That sounds like a good way to do it. Though primarily I would prefer to meet in the last week of December.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
I don't have a strong opinion on it, but it seems like tacking them on to the end of meetings would work, as I'm just not certain of how. I know we have a 10:30 time limit that we like to have on the meeting, so just making sure that it doesn't go super long, but that seems like a good way of going about it, but I'm really not super opinionated on it.
Okay, thank you. And Vice Mayor Watson.
I guess I'd prefer if we did it in a study session, and it's fine. The timing to me doesn't matter, whatever's best for the new council members. Just because, to be blunt, those are all, except the general plan, I guess, I could use more education on, but the other two items mentioned, I've already spent a lot of time on, and yeah, I don't know. I would, I guess I could leave the meeting early, but it's not a big deal. Whatever works for you guys works for me.
I mean, it sounds like there's a bit of a leaning, or at least an open, like more of a consensus on tacking on to an existing meeting, if that's what I'm hearing from the group. I think on some level, it's trial by fire in terms of learning by doing. That's kind of what I'm hearing, but I guess if there's strong opinions that come after this meeting, we can, have Karen schedule something, but it sounds like tacking it on, sounds like there's kind of general consensus that that's a way to kind of bring in new information.
Yeah, I just want to comment one more time, especially the thing about how we're getting a lot of information. I feel now that I'm hearing this, tacking on the end of a meeting where we're already getting this much information. And as it gets later in the evening, it does get a little exhausting. And so perhaps putting it in an extra meeting, or maybe even in 2 extra meetings, could be more beneficial for the absorption of everything going on, because as it gets later in the evening, I feel like most people's attention starts to wane. So I don't
No, it's a great point. So yeah, again, this deferring to the new colleagues in terms of what's going to be most useful for all of you.
I'm pretty open. I mean, I think all of them are decent options, so I'm really comfortable with any of them.
And again, to go with what you said before, if having it in December is too soon, then I'm happy to wait till January. But I think having it, as its own thing, especially for us new members who might have a lot of questions and have a lot of interest in these things that we don't know as much about as both mayor and vice mayor, it might be better to just have it in its own session where we can take up that time more freely.
Sure. Can we, Councilmember Atkins-Salazar, did you have something?
So I agree with what they're saying. So
okay. Okay, so it sounds like interest in doing something separate, but open to doing something in January. That's so. Karen,
we will send out a doodle poll and see what we can find in terms of comment times.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you. Congratulations again to our newest council members on your first regular council meeting. And with that, we are adjourned. Take care, everyone.